Okay, I think we're going to talk through this whole thing. I've cut off the just running deal. Here's first stop. Never really get him stopped. He starts to get his back end under him, and then he comes out of it. You don't hold his back end under him. He puts his, falls back to his front, actually throwing you up to the front. And you look after he after he stops and does that bounce, that his rear end is higher than his front end. If he's not stopping on the first bounce, if he does bounce out of it, you let him come up with his front end, but you hold his back end under him so that he should be lower. His back end should be lower than his front end if he has to take another bounce. There he's lower, and then he goes up higher and kind of stays higher. All the weight has gone to his front and kind of stayed on the front. Anyhow, so he actually didn't get stopped once to sling around with his rear end. That's kind of a different issue, but you need to try to hold him, straight and not get it around. It actually does kind of stay straight this time. Here we're just going to do a few stops over and over, just at regular speed. You can slow them down and when you watch them, if you have the ability to do that. Basically, it's the same kind of thing. Not really getting him stopped. When he bounces, he comes back on to the front. Here's one we'll do in slow motion. I think it was what you thought might have been the best one, so we'll do it again. Okay, he does get under him. He seems to want to get under him almost every time, okay, but you're not holding him under him. And when he bounces, you almost held his back end lower on those two. So this is probably one of your best stops. Okay, here we'll do a few rollbacks. You're not really getting him stopped and turn on this front. He's doing a lot of turning on. Here's, I think, one of your better rollbacks. You finally do get him kind of stopped, and then once he's stopped and settled, he does kind of turn on his hind end. Not right out of the stop, but it's probably one of the better rollbacks that you did. Even there, in that, he bounced to a stop, trying to bounce his hind end around before you finally got it collected up. Pull him up onto his hind end like you should, where he could come around on his hind end. We'll have a few more of these turns, these rollbacks. He's pretty much, the biggest problem is he's not really getting stopped to start those rollbacks. Okay, well, I had occasion to ride that horse. And there's the first stop. And he doesn't want to stop all at once, but he does get under himself. He wants to bounce back forward, but if you can see, I'm trying to hold his front end up, so or hold his back end still down, so that if he hops again, his back end is still lower than his front. He's still having his weight on his back end. He actually threw me kind of up on that one, and I just have to pull back, trying to hold him on it. There, he doesn't stop at first, but I just try to keep holding back, and for the most part, his back end does stay lower, and if you keep doing that, he'll eventually quit doing those extra bounces if you never let him bounce back out of it. If you always hold him into it, he'll get to where you can hold him into it in one stride. He was kind of bad about turning, and of course I did a lot of stuff that was kind of fighting with him because he was wanting to do things that I didn't want to do. but I'm trying to just get him to be working off his hind end in these turns. He's kind of not very happy to do that. He'd rather throw his back end around. When I give these signals, like here we're turning to the left, I want to have the left rein slack. And any tension on the rein would be on the right rein, so his head doesn't come off to the left. On one of these, it looks like I'm actually pulling him around wrong. I don't remember which one it is, but holding that head away from the turn is what holds their back end from flinging out. And the signal you should be giving is not just around, and actually I don't like to give any sideways signal with the reins. I like to give all the turning signal with my legs or whip if it's appropriate. Here he wants to turn his head toward the turn. I'm having to hold his head straight. Sometimes I don't get it all the way, but every time he turns his head to the left in a left turn, he'll step back with his left leg, getting his weight back to the front and getting away from turning on his hind end. There's a stop. As soon as he stops, absolute release. If he takes another step, pull again, absolute release, really quick. And even at this slow walk, when you stop, he gets under him. He will. He's happy to get under himself. What he's gotten used to is doing things that you don't tell him to do. Like here, just taking more steps, walking around. But if you get to where you're not pulling on him, when you're not giving a signal, when you do give a signal, you make it enough of a signal that you get the response you need. And as soon as you get the response, absolute slack in the reins. There he takes a step, so you pull back, get him stopped, and I've dropped him already there. And he stopped, takes another step, pull him back, drop him again. And it doesn't take too long from doing that where they will not require that you hold them in place or hold them at a particular speed. Here, making a turn to the left, a little turn to the right, trying to encourage him to come around with the front, keeping the back end stiller. He does it a little bit, but could use a lot of practice at this. He's wanting to pull his head over, and that's why I got with the whip, and I wasn't even able to hold it straight, but giving him enough. He does, when he doesn't get his head out of position, does actually turn fairly well. Like there, he turned his head left, stepped back with his left foot to get it out from under him, get his weight out from under it instead of just pivoting on that left foot. Here he turns to the right, steps back to the right because he had his head turned to the right. Had his head turned to the left, steps back with his left foot. You just have to encourage. I'm trying to set him back on his back end to keep him like there, to keep him from stepping back with that. Keep his weight on his back end so he can't pick that back foot up and stick it back out like he wants to do. And sometimes I'm not all that successful, but that's what I'm trying to do there. Here's just a stop. Don't have much of it before, but as soon as he stops, it's slack. Before I start stopping, it should be slack. They were trying to stop, and in between those strides, the reins are actually slack until he wants to throw himself forward. Here is what I do when they want to fling their butt around to the side instead of just stopping straight. When you try to stop, there he wants to go out to the right with his butt, and I pull his head over the right, which slings his butt back to the left, gets it in place. But I pull to correct him, and immediately when he's straight, slack the reins again. So they were slack and flopping. Here we stop. He's going off that way. I pull to correct him, but it's already slack. He was actually fixing to go too much, and I made a correction to the other side, made a correction to this side. But between these corrections, it's slack. And that's the end. Thanks. Bye.